Vanished without a trace. The Angikuni mystery. I never thought my life would become entangled in one of the most terrifying unsolved disappearances in modern history. I had heard the stories, of course, whispers passed around campfires and late-night radio shows. But nothing prepared me for what I found when I traveled north to investigate what really happened to the Inuit village of Angikuni Lake. This isn't just a tale of mystery, it's a chilling account based on real events, and what I uncovered still haunts me to this day. This story is not fiction. It's based on a real-life disappearance so disturbing, so inexplicable, that it has baffled experts for generations. In the frigid wilderness of northern Canada, an entire community simply vanished. There were no signs of struggle, no clues, just absence. This is my account of the Angikuni mystery. Listen closely, because the truth might be darker than you're prepared for. Chapter 1. The Call of the North. It all began with a letter. I was sitting at my desk on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, sipping lukewarm coffee and sorting through a pile of mail that had accumulated over a week. Most of it was junk, flyers, bills, the usual. But one envelope stood out. It was old, weathered, and carried the faint smell of smoke and cedar. The postmark said Manitoba, but there was no return address. I opened it, expecting nothing. Inside was a single sheet of yellowed paper, the ink faded and the handwriting crooked. They never left. They were taken. Angikuni Lake holds the answers. That was it. No signature, no explanation. Just a riddle. But it wasn't random. Not to me. I'd heard the legend before. In 1930, a trapper named Joe LaBelle reportedly stumbled upon the Inuit village of Angikuni, only to find it completely deserted. Tents were left standing, meals half-eaten, personal belongings undisturbed. Even the sled dogs, vital to survival in the Arctic, were found dead, still tied to their posts. The story had fascinated me since I was a teenager, and now it had come back, handwritten and personal. Something about the letter made my skin crawl. It wasn't the words, it was the urgency between the lines. I felt like I was being summoned. Within 48 hours, I was on a plane. My journey took me first to Winnipeg, where I stocked up on supplies and maps. I told the clerk I was heading north, and he gave me a strange look. "You're not going to Angikuni, are you?" he asked. I lied and said no. From there, I caught a bush plane to Rankin Inlet, a windswept community on the edge of the tundra. It was bitterly cold. Locals kept to themselves. When I mentioned Angikuni to the pilot who flew me further inland, he turned serious. People don't go there anymore, not since the disappearances. Some say it's cursed. I laughed nervously, trying to downplay it. "I'm just writing an article." He didn't laugh back. He dropped me near the tree line 2 hours later, and I was on my own with a snowmobile, a week's worth of food, a tent, and a satellite phone. The landscape was hauntingly beautiful. Endless snowfields stretched in every direction. The sun hovered low on the horizon, casting long shadows even at midday. Trees stood like frozen sentinels, and the silence was oppressive. The closer I got to Angikuni Lake, the heavier the air seemed, as if the land itself remembered. When I finally arrived, I recognized the place immediately from the old photos I had studied. The remains of the village were scattered near the shoreline, half buried in snow. Weathered poles from once sturdy tents stuck out like bones from the white earth. Ash from ancient fires still marked the center of the camp. I felt like I had walked into a tomb. I set up my tent and gathered wood for a fire. The sun dipped behind the trees early, and the temperature plummeted. That first night, I sat by the fire, flipping through my notebook, trying to organize my thoughts. And that's when I saw it. A flicker of movement in the distance, a shadow, tall and thin, just beyond the tree line. I stood up, squinting into the darkness. But it was gone. Wolves, I told myself. A trick of the light? Maybe. But my gut said otherwise. The wind began to rise, and with it came a strange sound. Not howling, not whistling. It was humming, low, metallic, constant. I didn't sleep much that night. The cold wasn't what kept me awake. It was the feeling that I wasn't alone, and that letter, still folded in my coat pocket, felt heavier than ever. What had I gotten myself into? Chapter 2. Echoes in the Snow. I woke with a jolt. The air inside the tent was freezing, and my breath curled upward in small clouds. Outside, the world had gone still. Too still. No birds, no wind, just silence, thick and unbroken. I unzipped the tent and stepped into the early gray light, every inch of my body telling me to tread softly. The remains of the village looked different in the morning. Shadows that had hidden in the night now revealed shapes, collapsed tents covered in frost, broken tools scattered half-buried beneath layers of snow. Each object seemed preserved by time, like the place had been abandoned only yesterday. I wandered toward what looked like the center of the settlement. Charred logs in a circle suggested a communal fire pit. Around it were overturned bowls, rusted cans, and one perfectly intact mug resting on a slab of ice. I picked it up. The ceramic was still smooth beneath the grime. There was something intimate about it. Someone had held this. Someone had drunk from it. And then I found the sled dogs. 8 of them, still tied to their posts, frozen solid, their mouths open mid-howl or mid-scream, their eyes long since iced over. Whatever happened here, no one had come back for them. No one had even tried. Why would a village disappear without their dogs? The Inuit depended on them, especially in winter. They were more than tools. They were companions, lifelines. Abandoning them would be like cutting your own legs off. I snapped a few photos. The air stung my fingers even through my gloves, but I kept working. Something inside me had shifted. This wasn't folklore. This wasn't a ghost story for tourists. This was real. This was wrong. I checked the perimeter of the village. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no blood, no bones, just the emptiness. As the sun climbed higher, it revealed more unsettling details. A fishing spear lodged in a tree 10 feet off the ground. An oil lamp hanging from a branch, swaying gently even without wind. A torn piece of cloth clinging to the frozen bark, like someone had tried to climb or escape. The weirdest part: meals. In 2 of the tents, I found wooden bowls filled with half-frozen stew, still there, untouched, slowly turning into slush. The food hadn't rotted. It had frozen solid, preserved by the endless cold. Whatever made them leave, it had happened fast. I spent the rest of the afternoon mapping the camp, drawing notes, capturing every detail. My recorder buzzed and clicked as I spoke into it. March 3rd. No signs of fire, no signs of panic, just absence. And then something odd. In the farthest tent, near the tree line, I found a pile of charred stones. Not wood, stones, burned black on one side, as if exposed to a fire hotter than normal. Nearby, the snow had melted into perfect circles, revealing the hard earth below. And right in the center of one, a small metallic disc. Smooth, unmarked, cold. I picked it up. It hummed. A low, almost imperceptible vibration. I dropped it instinctively. My fingers tingled. I stared at it for a long time before wrapping it in cloth and stashing it in my backpack. I didn't know what it was, but it didn't belong here. That night, the humming returned. Not from the disc, from the forest. Soft at first, then louder, and with it, lights, blue, green, pulsing through the trees like northern lights brought to earth. I crawled out of the tent and knelt low, peeking above the snowbank. The lights moved with intent, not wind-blown, not random. They flowed like a stream across the woods, disappearing behind the ridge. I felt watched. No animals made a sound. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I ducked back into the tent, heart pounding. My breath fogged the window. And then, for just a moment, I saw a shape, a tall silhouette. Human, but not. Its head cocked slightly as if listening, as if aware. And then it was gone. Sleep didn't come easy that night. In fact, I don't think I slept at all. Chapter 3. The Hunter's Journal. By morning, I was starting to question everything. Not the facts. I'd seen the dogs, the half-frozen meals, the lights in the trees. No. What I was starting to question was my grip on what could be called reality. Because none of it made any sense. And still, I stayed. The third day began grey and silent. The kind of silence that presses on your skull. The cold was sharper. I wrapped my scarf tighter and moved slowly through the ruins, trying not to step on anything that might have once mattered. I decided to investigate the largest tent I had yet to explore. Its frame was partially intact, and underneath the heavy snow, its flaps still hung low, frozen stiff. I cleared the entrance and ducked inside. The air smelled of old leather and decay. My flashlight flickered over remnants of what must have been someone's living quarters. A broken flute, an overturned water container, a bundle of furs that looked like it had once been a bed. Then something caught my eye. In the back, under a layer of snow-packed cloth, was a wooden box. Sealskin wrapped, water-stained, but whole. I pulled it free. Inside was a journal. The pages were brittle, ink blurred in places, but most of it remained legible. I flipped through carefully. The handwriting was tight, precise, written with the kind of care that only comes from someone who knows their words might matter. It belonged to a man named Ekatu, a hunter of the Angikuni tribe. The first entry was dated October 12, 1930. The caribou are late this year. Too many foxes near the traps. I fear the cold will come fast. Nothing unusual, just a man recording his life. But as the entries continued, the tone changed. October 20th. Stars do not behave. Last night they spun. Not like falling stars. They spun like angry spirits. October the 23rd. My daughter hears voices in the wind. I tell her it is nothing, but I hear them now too. They speak no words I know. October 25th. Something stands in the trees. Tall, thin, skin white like bone. It does not move. It watches, even in daylight. The word sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. Later entries became more frantic. Ink smeared. Sentences incomplete. Children gone. 2 yesterday. 1 this morning. No tracks. Dogs howl without cause. Stop eating. Won't leave tents. Sky burns at night, not fire, not storm. Colors like blood and ice. Then, the elders say they have come again, as in old stories, as in before. But we have no shaman now, no one left to protect us. The last entry was the most disturbing. They are inside the wind. They are inside the snow. We are already forgotten. Then nothing. Blank pages. I stared at the final page for a long time. There were no screams written down. No farewell. Just that haunting final thought. We are already forgotten. I sat in that collapsed tent for hours, reading and rereading Ekatu's journal. It wasn't just his voice I heard. It was the voice of a community trying to make sense of something no one should ever face. And they knew. They knew they wouldn't survive it. That night I didn't camp near the lake. I moved to the edge of the forest, hoping the trees would offer some protection. I kept the journal under my coat, pressed to my chest like a talisman. Just after midnight, the air shifted. The silence broke, not with sound, but with absence. Even the whisper of wind through trees disappeared. The pressure in my ears rose like I was underwater. My breath slowed, my body tensed. And then, Voices, whispers, just like Ekatu described. I couldn't make out the words, but they curled through the air, alien and wrong, like language remembered from a dream or a prayer from before humans learned to speak. I sat still, afraid to move, afraid that acknowledging them would make them more real. The voices circled my tent, and then a shape, standing just beyond the nylon wall, motionless, watching. I closed my eyes. Eventually, the voices faded. When I opened my eyes, the shape was gone, and I knew I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until I found the truth about what had happened to those people, even if it meant never leaving at all. Chapter 4. Radio silence. By the time I woke the next morning, frost had formed on the inside of my tent walls. My breath hung like smoke in the air. I reached for my satellite phone, eager to record my findings from the journal before the memories slipped too far into the night's haze. No signal. I turned it off and back on. Still nothing. I climbed out of my sleeping bag, pulled on my parka, and walked 20 minutes to the ridge where I had received a weak signal just 2 days earlier. I raised the phone to the sky. Nothing. No bars, no GPS, no connection to anything. I stood in the cold wind, staring at the screen, the chill crawling into my bones. Then I heard a crunching sound behind me, a crisp, deliberate step in the snow. I turned quickly. No one was there. I took a deep breath and began scanning the snow around me. That's when I saw them. Footprints, not mine. They were about 20 feet away, leading up from the other side of the hill and circling where I had just been standing. I followed them with my eyes. No beginning, no end, just an unbroken loop. I backed away slowly. Back at camp, I packed my things. I told myself I would hike farther out and try again. Maybe it was atmospheric interference. Maybe a dead satellite. Maybe. As I strapped my gear to the sled and reached for the ignition on the snowmobile, I paused. The engine wouldn't turn over, not frozen, not out of fuel, just dead. I tried again. Nothing. I opened the side panel and checked the wiring. It was clean, pristine even. But one cable, a thick black one, was severed, not torn, cut. I stared at it for a long time. That wasn't wind. That wasn't the cold. That was deliberate. And then I realized I was being isolated, not just cut off from the world. Removed. I took out the journal again, reread Ekatu's final entries. The voices, the sky burning, the white-skinned watchers. My mind raced. Could it all have been hallucinations? Shared mass hysteria? Was I falling into the same madness? I decided I needed to test something. I grabbed my emergency radio, a crank-powered model, and tuned it to open channels. I began speaking clearly. "This is Matthew Cole. I am at Angikuni Lake. Coordinates." I paused. The GPS was still dead. Northwest Nunavut. Approximate coordinates based on last known position. I require extraction. If anyone can hear this, respond. Repeat. This is Matthew Cole. Static. I turned the dial slowly. More static. Then, just as I was about to shut it off, a voice came through, muffled, crackling. "Not alone. Repeat, you are not." I froze. "Say again. This is Matthew Cole. Who is this?" Silence. Then another whisper, barely audible. "They hear you." The line went dead. I sat there, radio in hand, fingers numb, heart racing. "They hear you. Not we. Not I. They." I didn't know whether to be afraid of the voice on the radio or of what it was warning me about. That night, I stayed awake with a fire burning high. I held my flare gun close. I had never felt so small in all my life. Then the humming returned. Not far off this time. It started as a thrum underfoot, like standing on top of a distant engine. Then it became audible, a layered vibration, like 1,000 insects droning in unison. The trees trembled without wind. My tent flaps rustled through the air, stood still. I stepped out with my flashlight, scanning the darkness. Shapes, 3 of them, just beyond the trees, tall, still, watching. The light trembled in my hand. I raised it slowly, but as the beam struck them, it refracted, as if the light bent around their bodies like heat waves over asphalt. I blinked, and they were gone. No footprints, no sound. Just that hum lingering in my chest like a second heartbeat. I retreated back into the tent and zipped it tight, as if canvas and plastic could stop whatever had just stood there. When the sun rose, I realized something terrifying. All of my voice recordings from the previous days had been erased. The files were there, but silent, as if my voice had been removed from the world. I was being erased, and I had no way to prove any of it was real. Chapter 5. The Lone Witness. I couldn't stay in that tent another night. Something told me I needed to move, not run, not yet, but shift, relocate, let the land lose track of me even for a moment. I packed quickly, moving south along the edge of the frozen lake. The cold gnawed at my joints, but I welcomed it. It made me feel alive, real. I had no working snowmobile, no functioning comms, and a map that only half helped. I followed the tree line for what must have been 6 hours before I spotted smoke. A thin, grey column rising in the distance. I moved faster. Eventually I saw it. A small wooden cabin tucked behind a natural windbreak of rock and pine. It looked old but lived in. Smoke curled from a narrow chimney. A thin path of snowshoes marked a trail from the lake to the door. I approached cautiously. My instincts were tangled between hope and suspicion. I knocked. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman wrapped in thick patchwork furs. Her hair was gray and braided, her skin lined and wind-worn. Her eyes were sharp. "You shouldn't be here," she said, not unkindly, more like a warning. "I could say the same to you," I replied, too tired to play polite. She studied me for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." The cabin was warm, wood stove glowing, handmade blankets stacked in the corner. A single oil lantern hung above a small table. On the shelves were jars of dried berries, fish, bones tied with red string. She poured me tea, pine bark, bitter but welcome. "What are you looking for?" she asked. "Answers," I said. "About Angikuni, about what happened." Her eyes flicked to the fire. "They never stop coming. People like you, curious, looking for monsters." "So you believe something happened there?" She paused, then nodded slowly. "My name is Anana. My mother was from that village. She was a girl when the lights came." She told me the stories. I leaned forward. "The lights." Anana stared at the fire for a long time before speaking. "Not like stars, not like anything that belongs to this sky. They came from the ice, from under it. At first it was sounds, vibrations in the ground, then the lights, then the shadows." I told her about Ekatu's journal, the entries, the footprints, the watchers. She nodded again. "I know the stories. I also know what the government did." I felt a chill run through me. "They came after. Weeks later, men in black coats, military scientists. They cleared the site, told survivors it was a dream, threatened silence, took everything, even the bones." "But you remember." "We all do," she said. "The few who are left. But no one listens to old women anymore." "I do," I said. "I need to." She looked at me then, really looked. "You saw them already, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She stood slowly, walked to a chest, and returned with a bundle wrapped in sealskin. She laid it on the table and opened it. Inside was a smooth black stone, carved with markings that made my skin crawl, circles within circles, lines that didn't obey the rules of geometry. "What is it?" It's older than any story we tell. Found beneath the ice. My mother said it was once part of something larger, something buried deep. When the ground shakes and the sky cries, it stirs. I reached out but stopped just short. "You've already touched one, haven't you?" she asked. I nodded. Near the collapsed tent, it hummed. "You've been marked." The words hit me like a blow. They know you now. They see you. You need to leave, soon. Why haven't they taken you? She smiled, but it wasn't comforting. Because I live quiet. I remember without recording. I carry no tech, no signal. I am not a threat. I stood slowly, my hands trembling. Is there anything I can do? Pray, forget. But you won't. And they know that too. As I left the cabin, she placed a talisman around my neck, woven threads, bone, a small tooth. "It won't protect you," she said, "but it will remind you that you were warned." I stepped into the cold and felt truly alone for the first time. Chapter 6: The Forbidden Zone. I didn't sleep that night. Even with the warmth of Anana's cabin still clinging to my skin and the talisman pressed against my chest, sleep refused to come. Her stories played like film reels behind my eyes. The lights, the watches, the black stone carved with impossible symbols. I knew I had crossed a threshold. There was no going back. The next morning, the sky was iron gray. I thanked Anana with all the sincerity I had left and told her I would be heading east. She didn't argue. She only said, "If the trees go quiet, turn around. If the ground feels hollow, do not walk further. If you see your own shadow move before you do, pray." I followed the frozen edge of Angikuni Lake for nearly 2 hours before the landscape began to shift. Trees grew more sparsely. The snow felt thinner, brittle. Even the wind held its breath. There was a tension in the air that made the back of my neck prickle. Then I found it, a clearing, perfectly circular. It stretched 100 feet across, empty of trees or brush, just scorched soil and frost-burnt earth. In the center stood a single totem, twisted wood carved into a form that made my stomach twist. It had no face, no eyes, just grooves and curves in a language I couldn't understand. I stepped into the clearing, and immediately the air changed, heavy, thick. My ears began to ring. A pressure built behind my eyes. My knees buckled. I dropped to the ground, gasping, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. I forced myself to crawl closer to the totem, pulled by something I couldn't explain. That's when I saw the markings on the ground, thin etchings in concentric circles, like crop circles etched into frozen dirt. They pulsed faintly with a light too faint to be seen directly, only visible in the corner of the eye. I reached for my camera. The battery was dead. I reached for my phone, blank screen. The only electronic device still functioning was my analog voice recorder. I pressed record. This is Matthew Cole. I've found what appears to be some kind of ritual site east of Angikuni Lake. The ground is burned. There's a carved object here. It's not Inuit. It's not human. The moment I stepped inside, my body felt like it collapsed inward. I think this is what Anana warned me about. I stopped. A sound, a low thump, like a heartbeat in the earth. It repeated, then again, steady, louder. Then the trees around the clearing changed. They didn't move, but their shadows did. My shadow stretched unnaturally across the clearing toward the totem. Then it lifted, detached from me, and shifted across the dirt like smoke. I staggered back. I ran. I didn't stop until my legs gave out a half-mile away. I collapsed behind a snowdrift and vomited from the fear. When I finally caught my breath, I looked back. The clearing was gone. Just trees, ordinary unbroken forest. I stumbled back to my tent by the lake well after nightfall. My limbs shook, not just from cold but from the sense that I had trespassed. That night, I checked my voice recorder. The file was there. I hit play. Nothing. Just static. Until the end. A voice, not mine, whispering, "We know you now." The recorder clicked off. I threw it into the fire. It didn't burn. I buried it in the snow and lay in my tent, staring at the canvas ceiling, unable to sleep, unable to dream. Somewhere out there, under the ice, something ancient had stirred, and I had heard its heartbeat. Chapter 7. The Final Night. I don't know what compelled me to stay another night. By every law of reason, I should have fled, abandoned everything and walked until my legs gave out or the cold took me. But some part of me, maybe madness, maybe purpose, needed to see it through. I spent the next day rebuilding my fire pit, gathering what little dry wood I could find beneath the crust of snow. The wind was picking up again. The temperature dropped so fast, my water bottles froze solid within minutes. But I wasn't afraid of the cold anymore. I was afraid of the quiet. The birds had gone. The trees stood motionless. Even the snowflakes fell without sound, as if muffled by an unseen hand. I stared across the lake, wondering what was beneath it, what waited under the crust of ice, watching with eyes too old to understand. I remembered the hum, the shadows, the voice that wasn't mine, and I felt it in my bones. Something was coming. Just after dusk, the wind died entirely. I stood outside the tent, flare gun in one hand, the talisman from a nana in the other. The trees beyond the lake shimmered with a light I couldn't quite see, more like a feeling behind the eyes, like pressure and motion combined. Then I heard it again. The hum. Not distant this time. Close, beneath my feet. The ground pulsed, rhythmic and slow, like breath. Then came the lights. Not auroras, not reflected moonlight. These moved like predators, intelligent and fluid, blues, purples, deep crimson. They danced through the forest line and spread across the snow. And then the figures came. Dozens, maybe more, tall, thin, like bones wrapped in shadows. They emerged in silence, gliding more than walking. Their eyes glowed faintly, not with light, but with memory, as if they remembered everything that had ever looked upon them with fear. I backed toward the tent, slowly. One of them stopped at the edge of the trees. It tilted its head, and then I heard a voice inside my mind. "You heard the heartbeat. You opened the silence." I stumbled, dropping the flare gun. The snow swallowed it. "Why?" I whispered. "What are you?" They didn't answer, not in words. Instead, the snow around me began to shift. Not melt, move. It peeled away in geometric spirals, revealing black stone beneath. The same carvings I had seen in the Forbidden Zone. A circle formed, then another, then a third. The wind returned all at once, screaming through the trees like a siren. My tent tore from its stakes and vanished into the dark. I fell to my knees. And then, they sang. It wasn't music. It was vibration, color, emotion. I felt everything, every memory, every pain, every disappearance. I saw the village all those years ago, the people gathered in terror, the children clutching their parents, the dogs crying out, and then the light, the silence, the erasure. And I knew then, they hadn't vanished. They had been rewritten, turned into whispers, myths, static in the wires. I screamed, but the sound didn't leave my throat. One of the figures moved closer, and I saw its face for the first time. It had none, only mirrored skin, reflecting my own face back at me. And then it spoke. "You are the last witness." Everything turned white, then black, then nothing. When I woke, it was dawn. The lake was still. The trees were still. My tent was somehow whole, as if it had never torn, but I knew what I had seen. And they knew me. Chapter 8. Return to darkness. I left at sunrise. There were no goodbyes, no closure, just the slow, dragging movement of my boots through snow as I walked south, one step at a time, away from Angikuni Lake. The storm never came. The skies stayed pale and hollow, like the world had forgotten how to change. My compass was still useless. My GPS never woke back up. But I didn't need direction anymore. I followed instinct. A pull in my gut, a whisper just beneath hearing. I walked for days. Eventually, a hunter from a nearby outpost found me. He said I looked like a ghost, frozen at the edge of a logging trail, staring into nothing. I didn't remember falling. I barely remember him dragging me into his snow truck, wrapping me in blankets, feeding me hot broth. But I remember what he said when he saw the talisman around my neck. "You went to Angikuni, didn't you?" I nodded. He didn't ask anything else. He never did. When I made it back to civilization, I was a different person. Not visibly, not physically, but inside, something had shifted. Something had been replaced. Or maybe overwritten. I tried to tell my story. No one believed me. Not the authorities, not journalists, not even the other so-called researchers who had once chased these same legends. They said there was no proof. My photos were gone. My audio files corrupted. My written notes warped with ink bled into nonsense. Even the journal, Ekatu's journal, was blank when I opened it. Every page, blank, like it had never existed, like none of it had. I published what I could, self-published, online forums, message boards, anywhere someone might read it. Some people responded with curiosity, others with scorn, most with silence. Then the emails started, short, anonymous. "They're watching. You should stop. You saw too much." I moved apartments, changed emails, burned every printed draft. But it never really went away. The hum followed, in the walls, in the floorboards, in the spaces between moments. Sometimes I wake up at 3:33 a.m. and all I hear is static. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I swear my reflection is just a beat too slow. I can't tell anyone, not really, because once you know, you know. I tried to forget, I tried to bury it, but I was the last witness, and witnesses don't get to forget. They get to warn. So if you're still listening, still reading, still alive enough to care, remember this. Angikuni wasn't a myth. It wasn't an exaggeration. It wasn't even the first. It was just one opening, one tear in the skin of the world, and there are more, waiting. So if you find yourself wandering too far north and the wind goes silent, turn back. If your electronics stop working and your shadow begins to stretch ahead of you without cause, run. And if you hear a hum beneath the snow, soft and slow like a second heartbeat, it's already too late. They know you now. They're watching. And they remember everything. If this story chilled you, subscribe to our channel, Crazy Real Horror Stories. Share this with someone who thinks the truth can be silenced. Because it can't. Not anymore.